The pest control industry is like no other. If you want to learn the strategy and tactics to grow your pest control business, you're in the right place. This is the Pesty Marketing Podcast.
All right. Welcome to the first episode of the Pesty Podcast, where we are here to talk about all things growing your pest control company. I am one of your co-hosts, Andrew Peluso, along with Morgan Friedman. And today, our special guest is Bob Howard, founder and previous owner of 855 Bugs. Bob recently sold 855 Bugs to Terminix, which is very exciting. Congratulations, Bob.
Congratulations.
Yep. After 20 years, and Bob, were you in the business? Because you started at Terminix. So did you start there and then 20 years later sell your company to them? Was that the timeline?
I started with Terminix as a termite helper back in the mid 90s. And so I worked with them for several years, from the $7.50 an hour, go trench that, underneath that house guy, to the sort of a regional over a mega branch up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so with about 55 employees. And so that's when I left Terminix, and my wife and I parachuted down to Waco. And I actually came down here to run her uncle's personnel service company for him. And he had a different vision than mine. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start a pest control company from zero. And that's what I did. Started out as went and got a truck and got busy.
And was that first year, did you just go out and knock doors, or did you have some money to spend on doing some marketing?
Had no marketing money to spend. Had no money. So I literally I went after the real estate market. I went after the houses. So I went in and did termite inspections for people buying homes at a discount, which still to this day, 855 Bugs does majority of that in Waco, Temple, Killeen markets. And that's how I started the recurring book of business with residential. Picked up some termite one-time work and really started getting my feet wet. But it started just making relationships that way. Yeah.
And how did you come up with 855 Bugs? Where did that come from?
So the original name was bugs.com.com. Now, if you can imagine trying to have
That's not confusing at all.
Yeah, wasn't at all. Yeah. It was really hip back in the time, right? Early 2000. And then, anything.com was hip. And so,
don't be cool and do the .com twice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And imagine every time I try to tell someone to email me, Bobby at bugs.com.com, it was just a train wreck. And so I ended up, Baylor University did a study for me. And I had a Baylor intern, this is probably 10 years ago. And they said, hey, 855, you ought to go with the vanity number, the website and the phone number, toll-free number at the same, and QR codes, by the way, back then. We got 2 out of 3 right. QR codes tanked like nothing back then. No one even had a phone that would open up a QR code back then. Right. Now QR codes are the norm all of a sudden in the last 2 years. Right?
Yeah, they're making a comeback.
Yeah. And so, that's how the 855 came about.
Got it. Cool. I love it. Oh, I can only imagine it's just the math. How long did you go with .com before you realized, okay, this has to change?
About 10 years.
Wow. 10 years.
Well, I was growing steadily. And so there wasn't a really, there wasn't something that needed to change, for growth or for brand recognition.
Mm-hmm. Just for peace of mind.
Peace of mind and and for sanity. Yeah. But really, after I started getting critical mass of people, it's when it really started to go, this is crazy. Nobody understands what this is. So let's change it to 855. Kept Manny or praying mantis, kept that the same, kept the color scheme, everything. Just went to 855.
Nice.
So question to jump from the start to the end. I'm fascinated by this fact that I hadn't known before you mentioned it, that you used to work at Terminix. So it's funny that you sold the company to the same company you worked for. is that a coincidence? Did you were the people that wanted to buy old friends of yours, your old boss, or is it more random?
Great question, Morgan, and good pickup. It was engineered one day to sell to Terminix.
It was engineered from day one.
That was the thought process. But if you'd have asked me a year ago, I would have told you were crazy. It wouldn't gone to Terminix. And we received several offers from companies. Terminix literally stepped up. And even the president of the company flew in here to Waco and met with me and said, we want you to, end it where it started. And so it worked out well, but they were not the front runner early on in the process.
So did they give you an offer you couldn't refuse? Did they come in and just say, hey, we're going to make this work no matter what it costs?
I had 3 criteria, Andrew. One was the dollar amount. We had to hit the dollar amount.
Sure.
Number 2 was I wanted the people to have the opportunity and know that they were going to be locked in for a season so that my people were taken care of. And that's a very vague thing to do. It's very hard to pin that down because of emotions and feelings and all that. But I wanted that assurance. And then really the third thing was I wanted the brand to stay and live, because I ran the Terminix, I ran the big companies out of this market. And so, and one of the things that the division vice president, who I had known, Morgan, from years ago, told me was, he literally said, my God, we don't want to Terminix it. And so they've kept the brand. And that's been the pattern in the industry that started 4 or 5 years ago. Orkin owns a lot of Rollins owns a lot of brands out there besides Orkin that you don't realize Rollins owns. Rent-A-Kill, and a lot of those companies, there's companies you're going to be searching for to do business with that you're going to find out, hey, it looks like a $1 million, $2 million, $3 million shop in this market, but it's actually owned by another company. Our industry didn't embrace that until the last 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, because even when I was selling pest control and working as a technician for a little while, that wasn't the norm back then. I remember we were competing with companies who were built to sell to Terminix, and then they would move over to Terminix, and then that was our pitch. Oh, did you know the company that you just or have been with is going to sell to Terminix? So that was part of our shtick. So I can imagine that is something they wanted to avoid, and keeping the same local brand or the company you signed up with is a good way to not lose customers.
Yeah. I knew back then, Morgan, what it took. I used to do acquisitions for Terminix in the Metroplex when I had a big brand. Now the whole thing, the industry, the staff, the big dogs at the top, all that had changed over 20 years, right? But it was really sort of really amazing how they stepped up and said, hey, we want to welcome you back home. So it was kind of cool.
That's fascinating. What I also want to add is it's wonderful to me and interesting that 2 of your 3 criteria are fundamentally about loyalty to the team and the brand. And I think I know too many people who say, oh, people just build companies, like people to sell think just about the dollar amount, but really you would want the brand to stay because you've dedicated your career, decades of your life to this. It's a part of you. It's like a baby, and you want your baby to live on. You're loyal to the baby the same way you're loyal to the team. And I think this is an underappreciated fact in the M&A world.
Well, thank you. And I'll take it a step further, and that is I've watched too many acquisitions just crumble. They buy them, they roll them up, and half the customers and the staff were gone within 90 days. And
you've seen these acquisitions collapse in 90 days? That's much faster than I would have estimated.
No, absolutely. Because you lose the service technicians, mm-hmm. and for most companies, and you lose the customer loyalty and engagement. And so I've watched them implode fast. Yeah.
And speaking of the technicians and that being such an important piece of the customer service aspect of what you guys do, right? I mean, the relationship between Mrs. Jones and our technician is huge. And in fact, I noticed in doing some of my own research, you very quickly realize that when a customer is leaving a review online, they are very often mentioning the name of their technician and saying how much they enjoy him coming by, speaking with him, that he always, he or she always does a great job of making sure things are okay. Is there anything that you guys did from any perspective, maybe a marketing perspective, to shine a light on the technicians? Do your technicians stick around long enough where you could make them a part of your, brand awareness campaigns, or part of the phase where you're trying to build trust and a relationship with clients?
In our newsletter, we every month would become an employee spotlight. And so we didn't spotlight the staff and spotlight their family or whatever they like to do outside of that. It really brought and brings a human perspective to the people behind the service. How much could we have scaled and still pulled that off, Andrew? Great question. How big could we have gotten and still been able to do that effectively without running just into some hiccups? Mm-hmm. I think we could have gone a ways further with that still. But it really humanized. When you went to our website or see our newsletter or go through our stuff, you see who it is that you're doing business with, and it's very powerful for the consumer. Just to know, you got to remember, if there's a problem on your residential, we're going to be inside your home. People have got to have a comfort level to know who's inside their home. People want, in this day and age, they want to have a comfort level to even know who's not going to be inside their home, who's going to be outside of their home, right? Mm-hmm. And a brand can only bring that assurance to the consumer so far. At some point, it's got to be the actual people who are going to be around their home and inside their home. Mm-hmm.
Andrew, I just had an idea. On future episodes of the podcast, we can interview technicians. I'd like stories from the pest control front lines. I'm sure there are a lot of great stories.
Oh, I'm sure
there are a lot of great stories out there. I mean, there really are, from finding dead bodies to practical jokes to
finding. Okay, hold on. I think you need to tell us an abbreviated version of either finding dead body or a practical joke story now. We can't get better than this.
Yeah, I love this. I'll give you a great combo one I love to tell.
Together?
Yeah. So when I was
a practical joke of 10 people.
So I had my first technician, and we were servicing a funeral home. And so in the room there, in the embalming room, there were two doors to go in and out of the embalming room, is on the corner of a hallway. And so I told my technician, hey, after you treat this other room across the hall, I want you to go into this other room, flip on the lights, and go ahead and treat that room. And so I went around the corner, and you guys you're gonna die when you hear this. Anyway, I went around the corner, came in the other door, and crawled up on the embalming table and laid there in the dark. And so my technician's name was Oni. Just a great guy, great spirited guy. And I'm laying on the embalming table, and my eyes, I'm looking, I'm going this way, and he's back around on my right shoulder, and he flips on the lights, and I can kind of see out of my peripheral vision, I'm looking back at him, I can see that he knows there's somebody on that table, and he knows he's in the embalming room, but he don't want to make the jump to look over there. I could just see it. I could see his body language. He was like starting to glance, and then he'd look back and keep spraying. Well, he gets about halfway around the room, and I just say, hello, Oni. I mean, he drops his P&G can, hits the door as fast as he can. I had to go catch him out the front of the funeral home entrance and tell him it was me. So it was a very cruel joke, but in hindsight, in a couple of weeks later, it was extremely funny.
Wow. I cannot I'm putting myself in his shoes. I just can't imagine what was going through his head. He just must have been white when you saw him out front.
Just pale. White like a ghost.
Yes. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite stories to tell. It's just sort of a practical joke and just sort of how we built the company, just sort of on levity and humor, and have fun, drive sales. Have fun, drive sales.
I like it. I love it. That's great. And then that, that says a lot about the, like you said, the culture that you had, right? Because there's plenty of places, where, you probably couldn't get away with that, but obviously you had, you were close with these guys, and there was, enough flexibility and just relaxed nature about things that, and trust, right? I mean, you got to be able to pull something as silly as like a joke off, and for it to land okay is like you trust that person, you like them, and things are fine. So it really speaks to the trust that you guys had built. So one of the things I'm curious about, especially because part of what this podcast is going to be about is about how to help pest control operators grow their business, right? And so the way I'm going to phrase this is, are you familiar with Pareto's principle, 80-20 rule?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have a 80-20 advice for pest control operators who are trying to grow their business? Is there a core set of things? Prior to the podcast starting, you mentioned a few things that, let's say a pest control operator, they're, and that probably changes, right, from stage to stage. But I don't know if that question is too vague or if some things come to mind.
Yeah, it's a little vague.
Where did you guys, well, let me ask you this. What are the phases of like for pest control, what are the different phases that you go through as a pest control company to go from starting from scratch, essentially knocking doors, all the way to selling to Terminix? What is that sort of journey like? Are there specific milestones you can think of?
Yeah, and it's really a lot of those milestones are revenue based on my experience. I mean, for your 1-man or 2-man shows starting out, you find yourself doing everything that has to be done. And that's the nature of the game. As fast as you can get to where your skill set and what you're good at is what you're doing every day, and you feel those needs of those things that as the owner, you're not good at, the better. And when I really realized that and started growing, that's when the growth and the squeeze of the company starts to leave you as a business owner somewhat. You hire good people, you hire trustworthy, dependable people. You got to vet those folks out. And then, I don't mind doing sales. I didn't mind it, but at the time starting out, I was a better service technician. So I brought in someone to fill the sales gap. It was, he liked getting up in the morning and going and cranking out sales. I like getting up every morning and going and maximizing the customer experience. And so that's sort of where that grows. But that growth gets you to about, $750,000 or so, that sort of model. And before you're having to start adding office staff and you're needing to start adding more and more staff, you get to that 750 to $1 million, then you've got to have some more experts in your midst, some more empowered, I would say, team members that you can unload and trust and let them go grow and do things for you. And that's another big challenge I've seen in our industry. There's guys in this market right now who are the same size as I was 20 years ago, and 1-man truck out there. And it would be interesting if someone did a case study on anyone, why people choose to do that. Typically, the small pest control company operators will tell you, well, I don't want to get big. I say poppycock to that. Like that's a lot of times that's just an excuse to not grow. But you're not going to grow without sales, and you're not going to grow without marketing to drive sales. And those are two key components to it. And the stages and as you grow, you've got to become a sales company that does pest control. You just have to. Every technician, every office person, every inspector has got to be focused on bringing on and selling new business. And then within that, though, there has to be the launching pad for that, to me, which was marketing and healthy strategic marketing over time, to push that and push that culture. And then all of a sudden you start reaching a mass to where the numbers are coming in, one or two or three guys out there bringing in business is one thing. 10 guys out there bringing, all of a sudden the exponential growth can happen. And that's really where we found ourselves going from $750,000 all of a sudden to $3 million.
So I'd love to get some examples of the strategic marketing that you mentioned. Like what are a couple of things that you did were that not obvious or that took you far too long to realize, but had the highest impact?
I think guerrilla marketing somewhat, was very powerful early on. And by guerrilla marketing, I mean showing up and doing free education seminars at the schools for classrooms, talking about termites, talking about those things. All of those kids had parents, couldn't afford much money, to spend in marketing and really get my name out there early on. And so those sorts of things are important, engaging in the community in those aspects was really a key component of it. There's a nonprofit here that helps people get into their first homes. And once a month, there's 20 to 30 new home buyers in a room. And I got to stand up there for 15 minutes and tell them about a termite inspection and the importance of that. Well, guess what? Who they called when they needed pest control? They'd call me. But then as we grew and more competition came in, which is how most of y'all's markets are, we have to separate ourselves. And that's where through our services. You and I can both be doing the same exact service on a home, but I can call mine a don't bug me plan and explain out the process better. Then all of a sudden my service looks more valuable than yours. And that was another key thing in our marketing and our approach. And that is, naming our services. For educated and smart guys like you, it sounds simple. And I say that seriously, it sounds simple, but a lot of independent pest control companies don't grasp that. They just want to have a quarterly program or an every other month program. Well, I chose to have a don't bug me program. I chose to have a residential regular, exclusion program, and basically named our programs so that you could market the individual programs. Our termite partner program, we partner to make sure your homes didn't have termites. I mean, it was kind of putting a name to those services, other than just the generic pest control and termite control names.
My boring and traditional side, which is most of me as a boring and traditional guy, likes observing that the Bible opens Genesis 2:20 with God giving Adam the power to name all the animals. And like to me, I always think it's a powerful metaphor. Like naming things is this godly power, because once you name things, it frames how people think about it, how they interact. It frames all the emotions, and then but then if you believe the Bible, whatever you believe doesn't matter. It's this power given to us. Say, wow, we can name things, and we can have this power to frame discourse, frame how people think about things. So I love it.
Yeah, no, I wrap a lot of business stuff around Paul and around the New Testament, in a lot of ways, and I'm a big believer that the church early on was not just a place where you went and Sunday school, right, in the founding of the country. It's where you learned how to raise crops. It's where you learned how to do all those things, and it was also where I helped learn how to grow a business. Fundamental good stuff.
Yeah, I sometimes I think of the theory of religion that putting aside all of the theological beliefs, it's a culture that, or any religion, all religions in the world basically teach you best practices on what to do and transmit best practices one generation to the next. And as a result, religious people tend to have this fundamental advantage. Hey, we can start a new podcast all about religion.
Yeah. Andrew's over there going, where are you guys taking this? Yeah. Our three listeners want something else. They want to know how to grow their business.
No, this is great. I do want to take a step back to the what marketing worked early though, because I think you hit on something that Morgan and I were recently talking about, which is that early on in a company, and this is sort of a Silicon Valley saying as far as I've learned it, which is, you do things that don't scale, right? You do things that are one-to-one, that you're not necessarily going to scale teaching kids about termites or, working with lots of nonprofits. But that's a way to, get your name out there, right? And so you sort of get to a point where now you maybe have the finances to do things that do scale. And of course, Facebook and Google are sort of the, at least online, are the two big advertisers that you end up dealing with. Between those two and maybe any other kind of marketing that you did, maybe even offline, like billboards or flyers, whatever it was, once you got to the point where you were doing more of that, did you find that there's one channel that brought in the greatest ROI or was the most scalable, or maybe a couple things combined, like, sending out flyers to a bunch of homes in an area and then also targeting those same people with Facebook ads that worked at more of a scale?
So I'll walk you through the history. Early on, it wasn't internet, it was phone books. And I believe with Google and Facebook, it's my same philosophy as was with phone books. And that is, you've got to spend the money. With the phone books, I went in early on and negotiated what they would call a leader ad. I couldn't compete with Terminix and Orkin's 1-page and 2-page ads in the phone book. Didn't have the money to. But what I did do was step in and negotiate with AT&T, and they put me a little ad in front of theirs at the beginning of the pest control heading. And then as that ad brought in business, then I continued to spend money as we grew. I spent the marketing money to grow. This last year, we spent $200,000, in marketing dollars. And if you looked at our total picture, you say that out loud to a lot of independent pest control companies, and they're gonna shoot you. They're gonna die. There's no way we can do that. There's no way
and is that, sorry to cut you off,
do it as you grow.
Is that ad spend, and are you guys paying a management fee to someone, or are you doing this in-house and that's all just advertising budget?
Both. So I outsourced our marketing. I had a key team member oversee our marketing for me, but I outsourced and had a marketing company pretty much, soup to nuts, come up with everything for us. So we didn't have to create the content in-house. They would send us content, but we told them what content to create. Basically, go make us a termite flyer. Hey, you're going to send out an email with broadcasting. To answer your original question, though, Andrew, in the last 4 to 5 years, it's harder to measure the return on the marketing, but we would find our existing customer and our Google AdWords were really the two number one sources for the last 5 years, 3 to 5 years.
And existing customers, meaning referrals and word of mouth.
Right. Yeah. Referrals.
So in marketing speak, and maybe you've heard this, we call that the flywheel, right? So you have top of the funnel where you're bringing people in, but then you find a way either through incredible product and service or through incentivizing people to then share that, right? So then you bring in one customer that you paid for, and that one customer ultimately turns into 2 customers, right? And they sort of, share that information. Do you guys have a referral, or did you have a referral program in place to incentivize people? And was that a message that you really made sure all your customers knew about? Or was it simply a matter of we offer an incredible service and we were the biggest game in town?
It was became number 2, offer the incredible service and the biggest game in town. we were planning on in 2022, we're going to unlock a referral program to help drive that. The problem is, and we would have done that in 2021, even before I sold, we were discussing it, but I shut it down. And that's because my marketing company came back with let's give people $25 off their next service, blah, blah, blah. And I told them, I want something that people are going to go, I've got to tell my neighbor to get their service so I can get a 1/10 of an ounce of gold. Literally a 1/10 of an ounce of gold. I looked at credit cards with the referral with literally tangible gold in them as a giveaway. I mean, so that's what I challenged my marketing firm to do. Go bring me something no one else is doing. Go bring me something that if we launch it out, everybody's going to go, holy cow, look at what we can do with that. Like, how cool is that? And traditionally, as you know, in the industry, it's, hey, $25 off your service and your next service, and $100 off your termite if you refer someone, or free renewal for a year. All those things are, in their own right, I guess, are good in some level. I never found them to be a needle mover ever, even when I did them early on. I wanted at this next year, I wanted the referral program that you two guys would sit there on the podcast and go, wow, that's cool. Like that's something unique.
Yeah, something truly creative and memorable, right? Like something that someone puts on their fridge and says, I'm going to put this here because I want to remember it, because as soon as I talk to, Mr. Jones, my neighbor, that I need to give him this, or, make sure he knows about this kind of thing. Yeah. And that's a real challenge. I mean, that's why, and that is, to some degree, that's like real old school Mad Men kind of marketing, right? I mean, that is not just all data and all, numbers. It's you really got to sit there and think through. And frankly, you have to know your customer, so I think that also poses a challenge for a marketing agency if they're not deeply embedded in pest control and have done enough research to understand who is the customer, and not just who is the customer, who is a pest control customer, but who is that pest control customer in these different regions, because those personas are going to change quite a bit. The needs change quite a bit. The priorities of the individuals changes quite a bit. And so you can't incentivize the same thing in New York as you could in, Waco, probably.
No, you're spot on. I mean, the demographics are different. But at the core, the human needs are the same.
Sure.
And that's that. How do you shift through that noise so the consumer hears your message as opposed to the other guy?
By the way, as a parenthetical, I want to add what I find fascinating about the 1/10 of an ounce of gold example, which I might steal, by the way, is marketers and digital marketers often talk about affiliate marketing, and they often talk about viral marketing. But I had never really thought about linking those two together, not until now, where this is affiliate marketing, incentivizing people and getting them and building like a formal relationship with them, but doing it in a way so it's not just you get the $25 or the discount, but in viral marketing style, so that they want to talk about it. I love mixing these two together.
Well, in Texas, right? I mean, we're in Texas. And so, no matter what political spectrum you're on, gold in this market is people want to touch and feel gold. And they're always talking about gold. So I was like, and this isn't one, this is my American Express, but I had one made, and I don't have it with me right now, but it was basically a card, and it had a 1/10 of an ounce of gold right there. And that with our logo. And so the problem is I couldn't get that price point. It cost me more to make the card and the other things than the 1/10 of the ounce of gold. But you're welcome to steal that idea. If you ever launch it, you got to let me know, Morgan. I'd love to have one. But if you're talking about $100 referral on a service, you can make that program work. If you're talking about wanting to cap it at $25 or $30 from a 1/10 of an ounce of a gold, and then what it costs to make a card, it's just not going to get there. But merging those two ideas together, I agree with you. I never looked at it the way you said that, but I wanted a referral program. And it's just my high demand style. I wanted something that people would get excited about. If not, I didn't want to waste our time with it. We'll just give great customer service and move on. I don't want to gain or lose a customer over $25. And nor do many customers going to do or not do business in our industry for $25.
Mm-hmm.
My mind is already going.
I can see that. I can see the gears turning.
That's awesome.
Let me ask you this: what do you think there's anything in the pest control industry among operators and businesses that is lacking, or that you think should change, or maybe just that you think you're watching as it shifts? Trends. For example, you talked about Terminix acquiring businesses and not changing the brand. But is there anything in the industry that at this point you see things going in a certain direction, or that you kind of wish things would go in a different direction?
I think the customer accessibility online and in real time at their beck and call is critical, especially going forward. If you think of y'all's two consumer habits, I think of mine. We bought the motel down at the coast in Sargent, Texas, and I can't get people response, unless I pick up the phone and hound them once a day until they finally go, I better call this guy back. The consumer, and I say that the back end of that is not, their response is not a reason to abandon the concept, but the consumer, I'm saying, is demand, and the consumer will pay up to do business on their time. We all will. That's where this is trending. If y'all have noticed in y'all's markets, customer service today is really, it's either great or it's crap. There's very little in between anymore. And so if I'm a pest control owner of today, I'm making sure my people are smiling, they're happy, and we're turning up the knob and making sure everyone's happy and comfortable and feels great about their experience with us. And if you do that now, it'll pay off long term with customer loyalty. It just will. Focus on the customer. Don't navel gaze in this industry. Focus on the customer.
And that actually is a good transition into, I think, what is my last question, which was, if you were, just starting out, or if you could go back, or maybe if you're speaking to pest control operators nowadays, what's one thing you wish you knew earlier on that you think would be really useful for pest control operators who are trying to grow their business now?
I would say be intentional about a marketing strategy. Be intentional about it. I'm not just saying it because you guys are on here in some marketing call by any means. Everybody wants to overlook that. I've seen one-man show service guys come out who failed because they thought they can kill bugs and that's going to get it done. I've seen guys who are car salesmen start pest control companies and think they can drive sales and that'll get it done. Both of those lack marketing. Even the salespeople, they just think go hit enough doors and enough business will come in. Well, I mean, I'm sure that's an effective strategy for a lot of folks, but what a buzzkill. Go out and be intentional about your marketing and, make sure it's paying off, which is y'all's challenge, is to show some sort of data or metric that, hey, what we're doing, it's going to pay off. You got to give us some time. We can't just start off in February and then here comes May and you got all the business coming in you can, right? You guys have got to sell that, I would tell people, you got to give me at least a year. Get me through a year worth of pest pressure in your region. Let me know. You tell me when the ants are swarming. Tell me when the termites are swarming. Tell me when these things are happening. And then let's gear our marketing dollars and our marketing efforts toward those time periods for instant success, while we've got the train going down the track on some long-term brand recognition in the midst of that, so that people are seeing our name continuously. But once again, most of our services in our industry are driven No one wants to treat their German roaches when there's no German roaches. Just the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I love it, and it makes a ton of sense. And I know Morgan and I are learning a lot on this call. Morgan, do you have anything else?
No. I love your insight on your penultimate point about focus on the customer. I definitely agree, not just in this industry in general. The challenge is easier said than done. I've seen a lot of companies that want to believe that, but then, oh no, margins are eroding. This is expensive. Oh no, a huge thing. And it's like the first thing everyone skims on just for like natural human instinct reasons. So maybe you can have another interview another day or conversation where we can continue talking about Paul. But then after that, to get the less important stuff, we can. It's an interesting question of how do we take this great theory of focusing on the customer and like have it mixed with the nuts and bolts and finances of doing business. But leave that up to the imagination. We'll discuss it in the future.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. Every customer also has in my model. Let me just wrap this up with this. You have a dollar amount. So Andrew, your quarterly service has an annualized value on our wall. And that's the other thing I would say for your people marketing, as far as your independent operators and your companies you're working with, are they tracking those dollars? It's not hard. If we sell $20,000 in annualized business for 12 months, we're going to grow our business by $250,000 this next year if we don't lose anybody. That sort of math is not hard. But that math wrapped in with a great customer experience, now that's powerful. And your people making money off that math. All of our people at Bugs knew where they were and everyone else was when it came to sales goals, service goals. We were very transparent in that. It didn't all of a sudden make our people or our customer a number. They're still humans and individuals that we have to serve well, but it would be silly to take away the numerical value of that. And I see a lot of pest control companies want to do one or the other, and you got to do both.
I love it.
This was wonderful.
Yeah, Bob, I can't thank you enough for being our first guest on this podcast. I would love to have you on again someday. Maybe at episode 100, we'll come back full circle the way you did with Terminix. But thank you so much for the value you brought today for the audience. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I hope so, guys. I appreciate it. And then episode 100, then y'all can get on a flight and come down to the motel, and I'll get you a discounted room.
There we go.
Sounds great.
You got a deal.
Cool. All right, take care, guys.
Thanks, Bob. You too.
Okay. Bye, Bob.